Ekko is known as the boy who shattered time. While we don't know how much his in-game lore will shape his story in Arcane, Ekko has stayed true to his title. But rather than shattering time, he has shattered its shackles. A central theme of Arcane is how the past can be a prison. It can hold a person back, like Vander, turn them bitter, like Silco, or it can haunt them, like Jinx. But Ekko defies this by being one of the few characters to work forward from his past, working towards a brighter future. Hello, my name is Liddy, and welcome to Shaped by Stories, where we discuss how and why our favorite stories shape our own. Let's get into it. Ekko and Powder lived very similar childhoods in Piltover's Undercity. Both were presumably orphaned at a young age, and they were subsequently adopted by well-meaning people who gave them safety and encouragement when it came to their interests, inventing and tinkering. And both of these kids looked up to Vi. Vi was the big sister figure for Ekko, almost as much as she was Powder's. Ekko was Vi's little man. He learned how to fight and take up space like her, and honestly, I think he, like Powder, aspired to be just as brave as Vi was. After Benzo's death, Vander's defeat, and Vi's disappearance, Ekko had nobody. We don't know how he survived in those immediate years after Silco's takeover, but Ekko, much like Vi in her earlier years, had to grow up quick. As he later says to Heimerdinger, "You'd be surprised what you can pull off when your life depends on it." Ekko was always a prodigy, but his new circumstances forced him to break inventive barriers, among other things, in order to stay alive. Powder, on the other hand, never had that opportunity. She was taken under Silco's wing at an extremely vulnerable moment. She went from one overprotective protector to the next. Powder may have suffered a lot after Vander's loss and Vi's supposed abandonment of her, but she wasn't forced to grow up like Ekko was. She wasn't forced to face the music of the world around her. She lived in the safety of Silco's inner circle, while Ekko had to survive the worst of Silco's reign. The two diverge from one another from this point on, and it's sad to see. It's hard not to wonder if Powder hadn't been immediately scooped up by Silco in another universe, what kind of firelight she could have made. Jinx's inventions are also a sign of how stuck she is compared to Ekko. Jinx can crack most things mechanical, sure, but she's especially fixated on explosions, the very invention that ruined her life and destroyed her family. She's still stuck on that moment as the years pass her by, her passion ultimately hijacked by her greatest regret. Whereas Ekko, by Act 2, can literally fly. Ekko's made something that defies gravity, and flight is symbolically a very happy, positive thing. It's a hopeful concept in and of itself. It's a freeing sensation, unless you're scared of heights like me. The complete opposite of Jinx, throwing her grenades in a pit and watching them explode. But perhaps one of the most important differences between these two characters was how they ultimately viewed Vi. For Powder, Vi was something that made her hopeful, but also caused her great pain. While Vi's words of advice and encouragement kept her going, memories of their last encounter soured them. Powder, as she grew into Jinx, could never really let go of the pain of her most dreadful day. For Ekko, even though Vi kind of left him too, he kept her memory close. He used her memory, along with Benzo's and Vander's, as an example of the kind of person he wanted to be. He wanted to be strong, capable, caring, and ready for whatever came his way. These memories would not keep him mired in grief, or wallowing in self-pity or bitterness. Rather, they would pave the way for the leader he would become. Rather than be stunted by the past, he grew because of it. Sometime between Act 1 and 2, Ekko formed the Firelights, a band of Zaunites who saw the destruction of the Shimmer Trade and Silco's rule, and were sick and tired of watching their world fall apart. Silco may have said a lot of things about freeing Zaun from Piltover's oppression, but the Firelights knew that Silco's version of freedom was probably just freedom for some, not for all. One could argue that Silco's Undercity has a wider disparity between the bottom of Zaun and the top than it ever did. The Firelights are a small band of guerrillas whose edge comes from Ekko's inventions. Ekko is known as the boy savior, both admirably and mockingly. While the Firelights aren't exactly effective or nearly as experienced as Silco's people, each member shares Ekko's determination to get up and try again. They're a very annoying swarm that Silco's people repeatedly have to swat away. But the important thing to recognize about Ekko at this point is that he's still basically just a kid. While we don't know exact ages for anybody in Arcane, Ekko is around Jinx's age, so let's say maybe 16 or 17. And at that age, he's leading a small-scale rebellion. Ekko has the trust of his people backing him. He has a loyal second-in-command in Bat Dad over there. This guy puts his life on the line to save Ekko in a way not unlike Sevika does for Silco, showing just how loyal his people are. But even with the support of people that Ekko almost certainly sees as family, he's still a kid with a lot of pressure. I think a lot of Ekko's inspiration as a leader is drawn from those most important to him in his past. As we see in Vi and Ekko's reunion, Ekko still remembers and values how Vi fought, how Vi led. He still calls back to her lessons when he was a kid. The big sister who punched first and asked questions later. We even see how he charges at Jinx out of anger, not thinking about what his loss could do to the Firelights after Jinx kills Eve. I think he developed a deep appreciation for Vi's strength because of his own experience of being forced to grow up well before his time, just so he could survive, and care for those who depended on him. Ekko has lived a part of the Vi experience in her absence. But Ekko is still a kid, and his front of big man falls apart when he's finally able to hug the girl who used to call him little man. Both Jinx and Ekko have their moment where their childhood protector hugs them after years apart. They both shed a tear. They're both these kids who've been so alone, shouldering burdens that few others really understand. In Ekko's case, he's been leading a cause he likely feels that he's struggling to make succeed. To have this moment of vulnerability, after trying to keep a tough face, shows that it's been rough for him. But the main difference between Ekko's and Jinx's moment with Vi is that Jinx is so lost in the fog of her own pain, her own mire of the past. Jinx tears away from Vi, ruled by fear and suspicion. But Ekko, on the other hand, shows Vi the steps he's taken to the better future he hopes to build someday. A future built on the memories of those who deserved to live to see it. Unlike Vi, Ekko doesn't hold onto the past like a life raft. Vi held on to her memories because they were her one saving grace in Stillwater. She revisited the memories of the lost every day, and she sort of got stuck back there. She struggles to handle the new, harsher reality that she's presented with after getting out of prison. Season 1 follows her as she comes to terms with this fact. Rather than the past being a comfort, like it is for Vi, or a ghost like it is for Jinx, Ekko, along with all the Firelights, work to remember what and who they're fighting for. They don't have the luxury of living in the past or thinking of it all the time. They can't, as they're always either hunted by Silco or assaulting his operations. Instead, they work to never forget the people that they have lost on their road to a better future. They work very hard to remember why they want that better future. You can see a lot of kids among the Firelights especially, hinting that maybe there's a lot of families among its members. Just look at Bat Dad. I'm willing to bet that most of the members are fighting for future generations, not to get revenge for the past or to get power or respect. They just want to be able to live. Even the Firelights tree is a symbol of renewal. They're not about stagnancy, returning to Vander's Undercity. They're not about revenge and bitterness, the chief trait of Silco's empire. You can cut down a tree, even burn it down, but almost always trees somehow find a way to keep living. It's actually really hard to kill an adult tree. Just think of the trees that survived atomic bombs. The Firelights build their base around this tree, remaining respectful of this old, comparably ancient veteran of Zaun's hardships. A tree that gives them life and shelter. They appreciate it and its storied past. For the Firelights, it's not about returning to the Undercity of old or simply taking over the Undercity of Silco. It's about making something new or respecting or remembering those who came before. A cause that Ekko has championed for years. I get the feeling that Ekko has a lot of insecurity as he is young. What kid at his age who isn't currently leading a rebellion doesn't have self-doubt and confidence issues? He's young and he's got a lot of pressure, but I'm excited to see where they take Ekko as the story continues in Season 2. Episode 7 is one of the most important episodes in the whole show, I think, but it's especially important for Ekko. Earlier in the episode, we can see that Ekko isn't stuck in the past. Ekko is willing to overlook his own distaste for enforcers, for instance, to work with Caitlyn. Ekko was willing to join Caitlyn and go to begrudgingly help Piltover by returning the Hextech, preventing even more bloodshed in the lanes from either side. Or at least, in theory. Ekko doesn't want any Zaunites to die needlessly. He sees that every day anyway. But he also doesn't want to hurt innocent people in Piltover. That's not what he's about. Ekko's taking a big risk going with Caitlyn. He's well aware that the enforcers might be crooked, he knows many of them work for Silco, but he trusts in Vi's judgment of Caitlyn. While Vi doesn't say much about Caitlyn and Ekko's plan, Vi's defense of Caitlyn, I think, carries a lot of weight for Ekko. Caitlyn's appeal to him is also pure, and I think a part of him wants to believe a good turn is finally coming in this fight he's been fighting. It would mean a better fate for his people, too. He ultimately goes alone with Vi and Caitlyn, rather than bringing his own people, not to risk them, and after making it clear to Caitlyn, he will have the Council's ear if he is going to help return the Hextech, instead of trying to use it to build his own weapon. He's going to prove that his people aren't Silcos, and are not like Silcos, if things work out. Which they don't. Ekko was ultimately right to distrust Caitlyn's plan, even if Caitlyn genuinely didn't realize that Marcus was as crooked as he was. Now, Ekko's fight with Jinx sums up his whole character in 30 very well planned and executed seconds of awesome animation. It's incredible, the level of visual storytelling here. I know I'm gonna miss things, but still, it's just... For starters, Ekko stands between the promise of the future and the prison of the past. Vi and Caitlyn pass through the bright light to Piltover, together, towards something hopeful, while Jinx is left behind, alone, in the dark. Given Ekko's association with time, him being the person standing between these two destinations is awesome. Ekko is the only one fully in the present, quite literally, standing between time. He's not stuck in the past, and he's safeguarding the future. When he pulls out that stopwatch, we see the flashback sequence of the game he and Powder used to play. A game she always won at, judging by Ekko's frustration and Powder's teasing. She would shoot at him and he would try to close the distance before he got spattered by paintballs. Jinx's smile says she fully expected this game to go down just as it did when they were children. But Ekko, still the only one who literally moves forward in this scenario. He's running and she's standing there. Ekko cuts her down quick. So please let me know what you think of this in the comments. Maybe I counted wrong, so I admit this is a little shakier. But Powder, I think, in the past dream of this game, fires 6 shots or so. And then, in the present day, she then fires 6 or so shots again. Same timing, same position, same everything. She hasn't changed. Ekko is the only one of the two who has surpassed those days where he used to lose. He's not stuck in the past, not like his childhood friend. His determination has carried him forward, just as it has the Firelights, while Jinx's hopelessness has held her back. But when Ekko has her pinned down, he hesitates. Earlier this episode, we see Powder's face on the Firelights mural. Ekko tries to tell Vi that Powder is gone. There's only Jinx, and she's a lost cause. You can hear the reluctance in his tone here. He doesn't want to believe it, but he knows he kinda has to. He's still sort of stuck here on this part of the past, but he knows it's fatal to hold back because of it. Just look at what happened to Eve, whose face was just being painted on the mural after Jinx killed her in episode 4. A moment of hesitation is deadly. But when Ekko's faced with delivering the killing blow to somebody who's probably killed a lot of his friends, he sees Powder. I honestly do think that that small little smile she gives him is Powder. And Ekko kind of softens here. He looks at her and he remembers, my best friend. Ekko wants to believe that she can come back, especially after Vi had a belief that she could come back. Even though we've seen that Jinx, after having moments of softness when she remembers Vi, snaps right back into destruction mode as a knee-jerk reaction. Again, like with Eve, Jinx sets her grenade off, nearly killing her and Ekko. Killing Jinx is one thing, but killing Powder is another for Ekko. This is doubly important if you take into account that in League, there's dialogue that suggests, he basically admits it, that he had a crush on Powder. I also think, while I don't have solid evidence of it, that at some point, I think Ekko did try to rescue Powder. For starters, I can't not see Ekko trying to get Powder back from Silco after finding out she was still alive. But it's also just the way she says the boy savior. It sounds very like, oh yeah, the boy savior. The fact that Jinx made her little explosive robots after, the Firelight bug implies a particular level of malice or attention directed at Ekko and his group. If Ekko did try to rescue her, or in other words, to bring Powder back to the surface, this would be a thing that Jinx would not like. She would be terrified and angry at that idea, because bringing Powder back would mean facing the music of her past, a thing that is her greatest demon. But with that smile she gives him, I think it is Powder that's like, I recognize that you still care, but I don't deserve it. Boom. I realize that I don't really have a whole lot to go off of to prove that. That's just my own thing in my head, so make of that what you will. Whether or not this encounter is what forces Ekko to recognize that Powder is truly gone, or maybe if it rekindles his hope that she could come back, is something that we will not know until season 2. Heimerdinger has always been about maintaining the status quo, due to his fear of the dangers of progress, until he actually starts to see how desperately the world around him now needs extreme progress, because of his holding progress back for so long. He and Ekko both attempt to enter the other's worlds to help, and both are rejected by said people. Ekko's not kidding when he says to Heimerdinger that they've had the same day. Although Ekko did survive an explosion, so yes, it is kind of different. The other thing too is that we see these two leaders, who are from opposite sides of the river. Both have no hatred in their hearts for someone just because they're from the opposing side. Heimerdinger has deep respect for Ekko and is fascinated by his invention, much like how he saw the brilliance of Victor. It doesn't matter that they're both from the Undercity, not to Heimerdinger. Ekko, on the other hand, despises enforcers, and it makes total sense. Many are corrupt, and they work for Silco. Even before that, they didn't have a great rep in Zaun. But Ekko doesn't hate someone just for being from Piltover. He recognizes Heimerdinger instantly, not a hint of malice in his voice, just genuine curiosity. You know Ekko knows Heimerdinger's an inventor too. Of course he invites the now cast-out ex-counselor back with him. He's the only counselor that I'm aware of to ever voluntarily set foot in Zaun with no violent intentions in the whole show. And Arcane's not as simple as good guys and bad guys. There's so much more to the story and the politics. But it's here, in Heimerdinger seeing the Firelights home and seeing the risk involved with Ekko's inventions, that he's forced to see what progress is really about a lot of the time. Ekko didn't create all he did or do all the work he did because it was fun. It was because he didn't have a choice. Heimerdinger has grown so used to inventing for joy, rather than necessity. Ekko reminds him that for many, especially short-lived humans, progress can't wait. Fun is a luxury. Just look at Heimerdinger's little scene with the girl who he makes that spinning top for. Her mom yanks her away because who knows what that yordle's up to. The world is a mess for a lot of people, especially in the Undercity. Heimerdinger is forced to realize that, as right as he is about how badly progress can go, being overcautious can lead to horrors of another sort. Ekko tells him it's not enough to give people what they need to survive. You have to give them what they need to live. Survival is what most people of the lanes try to do, day in and day out. For most, they don't feel they have any power to change that. They don't live, they just exist. For Ekko and the Firelights, they chose to fight so they could live, rather than continue to just survive. Heimerdinger isn't technically wrong about the nature of mankind, and how great power is almost always abused. I don't think Ambessa Medarda is very wrong with her quote either. It's funny that you have like the brutal warlord and the little yordle who just likes creating little things, both agreeing on the folly of man. Ultimately, Heimerdinger's restricting and rationing of progress with each generation of humans hasn't sprouted from nothing. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to do what we can with what we have and where we are to do better than what came before us, just as Ekko does. So that the day might come where that little girl could be allowed to have that spinning top that a genuinely sweet yordle made for her. I also think too that Heimerdinger, being a born mentor and teacher who just loves nurturing creativity and inventiveness in his students, could be really good for Ekko. It might make him feel more confident to have somebody to look up to in an area that he's passionate about, because he definitely loves inventing. He just doesn't have the time or the luxury of time to do so like he did when he was a kid. I think it could be nice for Ekko to finally have that mentor encouraging him again, probably like how Benzo used to. But we won't know how this goes until season 2. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. This was fun. I looked more into League stuff for Ekko. I apologize if I got anything wrong. I don't really know much about League. Again, I will say this. If you've made it this far and you haven't seen Arcane, go watch Arcane, what are you doing? But if you have made it this far and you don't have intentions of watching Arcane because it's associated with League of Legends, I would recommend watching it. Somebody, I think I read a comment in my comment section where somebody said, it's better if you don't know anything about League going into the show. And Yeah, I thought that was really funny. It's better if you don't play League. Thank you very, very much, everybody, especially to my members. You guys are awesome. You're floating. You're floating up and down the screen. Hell yeah. Well, I guess sliding. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Until the next one, guys. Goodbye!